Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast, is sponsored by Jaguar Land Rover Laval. Get out of the big city and experience a construction zone-free test drive. There is such a thing.
Hi there, I'm Terry DiMonte, and look, there's Ted Bird. It's the Standing By podcast. What's this, the best of edition, Ted?
Well, it's all we've got, Ter. Couldn't come up with anything new, so we're just going to rehash what we did the last time around.
It's kind of like leftovers, is it?
Yeah, it is. Well, you know what? We get caught up in the pandemic. Our season 2 has been delayed for various and sundry pandemic-related reasons. So we thought maybe to tide you over, we'd do a best of Standing By the Terry and Ted podcast from season 1. So we've gone through all 10 episodes, and we've found, well, I'm not sure if it's the best of, but it's, let's call it Some of Terry and Ted. Season 1. It's the Some of Terry and Ted show.
I was just going to go into a whole thing about how these were very closely curated by both you and me, hours in the vaults, studying the tapes, making sure we had the very best content for you to listen to. But that would be a lie.
Well, you know what? I think we did find some pretty good stuff. I've got it all written down here. I can give you a little rundown of some of what we've got on the best.
Alrighty, let's do that.
Yeah, well, from episode 1, we talked about the Terry and Ted chemistry right out of the gate, about what made this such a long-lasting and relatively successful, and certainly for the two of us, rewarding personal and professional relationship. We also touched on the time I tried to quit smoking and you were going to throw me out the window. The WW11 story, I mean, that, you can't not include that. Yeah. The time we ate too much hash in Amsterdam. Drunk guys on the news, that's always a favorite. And I was one of them one day. And what else have we got? Big fat crybabies. I wrote down big fat crybabies. Well, that's talking about us, how we get weepy and sentimental as we get older. And I've talked to other people in our demographic, and we're not alone there.
Right.
Yeah, I think it happens to everybody. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's a physiological thing or strictly a psychological thing. You know what's happened to me lately? I've been binge watching Yellowstone. Are you watching Yellowstone?
No, not yet. We tried earlier last year and couldn't get past the first couple of episodes, but because of the reaction we've been getting from most of our friends, we're going to go back at it.
Well, I liked it right out of the gate, and just about everyone else I've spoken to has, but what I was getting at was I cry every episode.
Yeah.
There's at least one thing that makes me cry or chokes me up every episode.
Wow.
And I think that's partly because I'm old and sentimental now, but it's so good. It's so well done, and they know how to play with your emotions. The way it's written and acted and filmed, everything about it plays with your emotions, and in a good way. It manipulates your emotions in a good way, I find, anyway.
We just finished this last weekend. We finished Afterlife with Ricky Gervais. If you haven't seen Afterlife season 3, get ready, because it is it's an emotional powerhouse, and it's not just I got some tears in my eyes. For me, it was snot bubbles in the whole world. I mean, it's an emotional punch to the gut. The last episode of the last season of Afterlife is pretty powerful.
I saw somebody mention something about that on Twitter the other day, and I haven't watched. I think I watched the first episode or 2 of that, and I didn't stick with it. And it's not because I didn't like it, because I remember specifically a scene in the first episode where he's walking past a schoolyard and some little kid calls him a pedophile. And I don't remember exactly what the exchange was. I just remember belly laughing at it. Yeah. He's one of the funniest guys in the world. That Ricky
absolutely.
I miss him hosting the Golden Globes. There's no better comedy than him taking the piss out of Hollywood royalty to their faces.
Well, I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. And in the meantime, to tide you over, I guess we should get to the best of, or what we're calling the best of, Standing By the Terry and Ted podcast. Yes?
I would say so. And I think that Yellowstone and Ricky Gervais probably aspire to the level of entertainment that you're about to be exposed to here.
I'm sure they do. Here you go. Enjoy. Do you think that it had anything to do, the sort of rhythm and the success of the show back in 88, 89, 90? Did it have anything to do with Green Avenue and the ridiculous size of that closet-like studio?
Possibly. That was a funny little studio, eh? That was, I worked in that building before I came to Shome. In 1979, I worked at CKGM for about 5 months. And Ralph Lockwood was the morning man, and Robert G. Hall, and Mitch Snaden, and Buster Bodine, and all those guys.
Surrounded by radio giants.
Yeah, well, it was like the tail end of top 40 AM radio still being a force, and that room, I believe that room was the newsroom at that point, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think it was as small as it was. I guess they must have done some renovations. But yeah, you're right. It was a tiny little dark room, and that might have had something to do with it. But
and you smoked in it.
That's the crazy part.
I smoked in it
like a friggin' chimney.
Yes,
and I think that's another thing that. No, and I mean you were good about that because you've been a non-smoker your whole life. I quit about it's 21 years ago now, and I'll tell you something. I haven't had a drink in over 24 years, and you could sit in front of me on a hot day with a cold beer or with a glass of chilled white wine with that one droplet running down the side of the glass. Wouldn't bother me one bit.
Wow.
But you light a smoke.
Really?
And I smell that
really?
Freshly lit tobacco.
Wow. Oh, boy. Really? Eh?
Yeah, I could fall off that wagon real easy.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, it was good of you to let me smoke in the studio because it just...
That's okay.
No, because I mean, it was just, it was for, and smokers know this, it's a comfort thing,
right.
You know, and it's a habitual thing as a smoker. I can remember pour a coffee, light a smoke.
Right.
Get on the phone, light a smoke.
Smokers will understand.
Get in the car, light a smoke.
Right.
Sit down in front of the microphone to read the news, light a smoke. And you always let me smoke. You never said, hey, you can't smoke in my studio. And Christ, if you get emphysema, that's on me, I guess. Although I think, like I say, it's been, I haven't had a cigarette in it was New Year's Eve, 1990 something. You know how I quit finally?
Why?
Because I tried everything. Remember the patch? Remember when I tried the patch? And remember Life Sign?
Yeah. Christ.
There was this little like computer thing, and it would tell you when you could have a cigarette.
Yeah.
Like you would program it, and then it would tell you when you could smoke it. It was the point was it would wean you off of the tobacco.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how far I threw that thing.
Well, I was going to say, I remember your efforts to quit smoking a couple of times, and after you'd leave the studio, I'd say to Patty, I'm going to buy him a fucking cigarette because it's a tough thing to do. And
it's the hard. I think it's the hardest habit. They say it's harder than getting off heroin.
You became fairly irritable.
Yeah. No, they say that nicotine is more addictive. Whoever they are, but I've heard that. I've heard it, so it must be true.
Yeah, it must be. You saw it on the internet.
So I finally went to my doctor, Dr. Benjamin in Côte St. Luc, who's still my doctor today after all these years. And I told him, I want to quit smoking. What do you suggest? And he gave me a prescription for a pill called Zyban, which was used as a stop smoking aid. Mm-hmm. It's also Wellbutrin by another name, and Wellbutrin is an antidepressant. So I took the Zyban, I managed to quit smoking, and my wife at the time said to me, I want you to keep taking those. I know you don't smoke anymore, but I want you to keep taking those pills. I like you better when you're on those pills.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So apparently I was also, I was depressed at the time.
Did you get any of the side effects that they list on TV? Vomit, diarrhea?
No. I guess they seem to. I guess according to her, they did me good.
I don't recall you shitting your pants.
No,
so that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, stand by.
Yeah,
the day is young. But yeah, there always has been something special, and I'm thinking about it the other day, trying to identify what is it exactly, and I think some of it's innate, but I also think a lot of it has to do with. I think we were raised. Similarly.
Yeah.
We're the same age. I think we were raised with similar values.
Yes,
I think we were raised by people who had similar tastes in popular culture. Yeah. So everything has always been relatable.
Because you don't have headphones.
Yeah.
Always as close as possible.
Okay.
To remember,
Yeah. That will be where there's an edit.
I think we should leave it in.
Are these that unidirectional? Are they?
Sorry?
Are these that unidirectional? In other words, you got to talk right into them.
Yeah, because if you lean back a bit,
Right.
you hear it. It sounds further.
Well, that's no good. I'm leaving.
How's this? How's this? Is this good, Pantelis? Or sorry, Poseidon? How's my mic technique?
Overmodulating.
What do you mean overmodulating?
That's an inside radio gag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
I agree with you. I think there was a similarity to the way we were raised and also our values. And, you know, it's hard to imagine now, but we came up at a time where we said things and did things that today we would be fired for. And we weren't controversial.
No, not at all. But you can get fired for a lot these days,
Yeah.
too. I find you got to tiptoe
Yeah.
more these days
Yes.
than ever.
Let's talk about, because it was real happenstance. I want to talk about when we first got started. I had already arrived at Shome. I was like, I'd love to say
You were a big deal. There was no fucking being around this guy at all. He was just.
I had just arrived.
Don't you know who I think I am?
I had just got to
kidding.
Shome in 1984, and I have to admit, I was shitting kittens because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to do a morning show. I had no idea how to be a morning guy. And Peppermint Patty really, really was such a massive help to me through that period.
Listen, that was good timing because I wouldn't have been any help to you the way that Pat. No, seriously, she was the perfect on-air partner for you at that time, and also a friend off the air as well.
And
I wouldn't have held your hand through that.
No.
I would have been like, hey, you're on your own, pal. I got my own problems.
And that friendship endures to this day, I should mention. But it started with, we were actually working as competitors.
I was at FM,
Shome.
and I was at FM 96, which became Mix 96, which is now Virgin, but I don't think that's going to last much longer. I don't know what they're going to do with it next. If they're going to turn it into, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was at Scaramouche one night, which was a bar it was on Bishop, wasn't it?
Patty was a bartender there.
Oh, okay.
On Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Can you imagine?
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly how it transpired, but I think someone said to me, Terry DiMonte wants to buy you a drink. And I knew who you were. I knew you were the morning man at Shome, but we had never met. So you bought me a drink, and it was probably something really fruity because it was the 1980s, right? It was probably some really just all sugar. and we had a chit chat, and I remember coming away from that thinking, you know what? I'd like to work with that guy sometime.
Nice?
Yeah, because we had that immediate sort of connection to the point where, I thought to myself, not only would I like to work with him sometime, but if I ever decide to change teams, I think I'd like him to be my first. I might have made that part up.
I think so.
Yeah. And then the opportunity arose. It was years later. It was like 3 years later
Was
or
it
so.
that long?
Yeah, it was 1988. Because we met in 85.
Yes.
That's when I started in Montreal.
I have to confess, I don't remember buying you a drink, but I remember one of the things that I learned when I got to Montreal from Winnipeg was it was cutthroat competition. Nobody talked to anybody. Everybody hated the other
That's the
team.
stupidest thing and always has been.
Yeah, and it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard of.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, the hell with that.
Yeah.
I respect this guy. I'm going to buy him a drink, even though there's an umbrella in it. I'm going to buy him a drink. But I must admit, I don't recall.
The guy in the colorful Cosby sweater. Could you send him a drink, please?
Do you think that it had anything to do, the sort of rhythm and the success of the show back in 88, 89, 90? Did it have anything to do with Green Avenue and the ridiculous size of that closet-like studio?
Possibly. That was a funny little studio, eh? That was, I worked in that building before I came to Shome. In 1979, I worked at CKGM for about 5 months. And Ralph Lockwood was the morning man, and Robert G. Hall, and Mitch Snaden, and Buster Bodine, and all those guys.
Surrounded by radio giants.
Yeah, well, it was like the tail end of top 40 AM radio still being a force, And that room, I believe that room was the newsroom at that point, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think it was as small as it was. I guess they must have done some renovations. But yeah, you're right. It was a tiny little dark room, and that might have had something to do with it. But
And you smoked in it.
that's the crazy part.
You smoked in it.
like a friggin' chimney.
Yes.
And I think that's another thing that. No, and I mean, you were good about that because you've been a non-smoker your whole life. I quit about, I don't know, it's 21 years ago now. And I'll tell you something. I haven't had a drink in over 24 years, and you could sit in front of me on a hot day with a cold beer or with a glass of chilled white wine with that one droplet running down the side of the glass. Wouldn't bother me one bit.
Wow.
But you light a smoke,
Really?
and I smell that
Really?
freshly lit tobacco.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
Really? Eh?
Yeah, I could fall off that wagon real
Wow.
easy.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. But anyway, it was good of you to let me smoke in the studio because it just...
That's okay.
No, because I mean, it was just, it was for, and smokers know this, it's a comfort thing, you
Right.
know, and it's a habitual thing as a smoker. I can remember pour a coffee, light a smoke.
Right.
Get on the phone, light a smoke.
Smokers will understand.
Get in the
same.
car, light a smoke.
Right.
Sit down in front of the microphone to read the news, light a smoke. And you always let me smoke. You never said, hey, you can't smoke in my studio. And yeah, Christ, if you get emphysema, that's on me, I guess. Although I think, like I say, it's been, I haven't had a cigarette in it was New Year's Eve, 1990 something. You know how I quit finally?
What?
Because I tried everything. Remember the patch? Remember when I tried the
do,
patch? And
yeah.
remember Life Sign?
Christ.
There was this little like computer thing,
Yeah.
and it would tell you when you could have a cigarette.
Yeah.
Like you would program it, and then it would tell you when you could smoke it. It was the point was it would wean you off of the tobacco.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how far I threw that thing.
Well, I was going to say, I remember your efforts to quit smoking a couple of times.
Yeah.
And after you'd leave the studio, I'd say to Patty, I'm going to buy him a fucking cigarette soon because it's a tough thing to do. And
It's the hard. I think it's the hardest habit. They say it's harder than getting off heroin.
You became fairly irritable.
Yeah. No, they say that nicotine is more addictive. Whoever they are, but I've heard that. I've heard it, so it must be true.
Yeah, it must be. Saw it on the internet.
So I finally went to my doctor, Dr. Benjamin in Côte St. Luc, who's still my doctor today after all these years. And I told him, I want to quit smoking. What do you suggest? And he gave me a prescription for a pill called Zyban, which was used as a stop smoking aid. Mm-hmm. It's also Wellbutrin by another name, and Wellbutrin is an antidepressant. So I took the Zyban, I managed to quit smoking, and my wife at the time said to me, I want you to keep taking those. I know you don't smoke anymore, but I want you to keep taking those pills. I like you better when you're on those pills.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So apparently I was also, I was depressed at the time.
Did you get any of the side effects that they list on TV? Vomit, diarrhea?
No. I guess they seem to. I guess according to her, they did me good.
I don't recall you shitting your pants.
No,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, stand by.
Yeah,
the day is young.
I would like you to tell a couple of your stories because the other day, my wife and I were talking. And I extended my pinky finger to her, and she said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was holding my pinky out, and she said, "What is that? What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, it's a story I got to get Ted Bird to call and tell." And since we're telling sports stories, I've opened the doors.
Okay, I've got that one, and I've also I'll also tell the Yvon Cornway golfing story, which is a good one too.
Alrighty.
So the story with the pinky finger.
Yes.
1980s. I'm covering the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm living in Toronto, working as a sports reporter at CFTR Radio, and I'm covering Blue Jays games. And I'm down in the clubhouse after the game one day, and Cliff Johnson, who was he was a big man, Cliff Johnson. He was a designated hitter for the Blue Jays, and he's standing by his locker, and he's holding a beer. And Marty York from the Globe and Mail, who to this day I still I interact with Marty on Twitter quite a bit. Good guy. And Marty York walks over to Cliff Johnson and he goes, he sticks out his hand. He goes, Cliff, Marty York, Globe and Mail. And Cliff Johnson, holding his beer, goes, extends his pinky finger with the hand that's holding the beer. And Marty, not sure what to do, takes the pinky finger and shakes it. Nice to meet you. That's a pretty good pinky shake you got there.
You just had, didn't you just get blocked by Rod Carew?
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball
my first
stories?
Hall of Fame block on Twitter. Yeah.
Yes, tell that story.
Well, same era, early 80s. I'm covering the Blue Jays. The California Angels are in town. It's just before the All-Star break, and Rod Carew has been named to the All-Star team, the American League All-Star team. And I'm down in the Angels clubhouse, and I'm looking, this is pregame. Who can I interview? Oh, look, there's Rod Carew. I'll interview him about getting named to the All-Star team. So I walk over, and I stick out my hand. I go, hi, Rod, Ted Bird, CFTR Radio. And he's fiddling around in his locker and putting stuff away and taking stuff out. You? No, he's like, his side is to me. It's from the side.
Yeah, gotcha.
And he doesn't even look at me.
Right.
He doesn't even look at me.
Right. And
there's this sort of uncomfortable pause, and I don't remember if he said, well, what do you want? Or anyway, I said to him, I was just wondering if I could interview you about getting named to the All-Star team. No. Okay, well, thanks. Good chat. Good to see you, and fuck you, pal. And
you didn't say that.
No. But fast forward, that would have been like 1983, probably, maybe 84. So fast forward, however many years it is since then, and he's here. I see him on Twitter a few months ago. A video on Twitter. Hi, everybody. I'm on Twitter now, and I was hoping maybe you could follow me. And he's like 70 years old or whatever he is now. And so I responded, and I told exactly that story. I said, I met you in the Angels clubhouse in 1983. I was a radio reporter, and I asked you to, I extended my hand and asked you if I could do an interview with you and introduce myself, and you ignored both gestures. So I'll pass. Thanks very much on following you on Twitter. And then for whatever reason, his name came across my Twitter timeline again more recently, and he had blocked me.
There you go.
Okay, I got blocked by a Baseball Hall of Famer.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking maybe I can put together I can get blocked by an all-star team of Hall of Famers. I've got to start on my infield. We'll see who's next. This is one of my favorite experiences when I first came to Montreal. I was interviewing Larry Robinson after practice one day, and after I was done the interview, he said to me, what time do you get up in the morning? I was like, what? And I said, around 3:30 or so. He said, yeah, I figured you must start early because I listen to you when I'm in the barn feeding the horses in the morning. And I just about shit gumdrops. Yep. And I ran straight home and phoned my father and said, Larry Robinson listens to me.
Just like that.
Yeah, that was so exciting to me. He's the nicest man.
Oh, my God.
He's such a nice man, Larry Robinson.
He tweeted about me one time, and I had it printed and framed.
Let me tell the Yvon Cornway story, because this is a classic. Early 90s at Shome, we had an auction, a fundraising auction for, I don't know what the charity was for, but it was to raise money for a charity. You could bid on an opportunity to go golfing with Ted Bird from Shome, big deal, a Bell Canada representative, and Yvon Cornway, Montreal Canadiens Hall of Famer and 10-time Stanley Cup champion. So ultimately, a guy named Mark Mintzberg had the winning bid. And so I went out, and I'm not a golfer. I think it was actually the first time I had ever literally gone out on a golf course and golfed. I used to go to the driving range, and I guess because I wasn't a half bad baseball player, I could hit a golf ball pretty good. Like I could, and the way I looked at it in the driving range is if I hooked it, that's a double down the line.
Right.
If I hooked it, but hit it far, that's a double down the line.
Right.
Yeah. If I sliced it and hit it far, that's an opposite field home run.
Right.
So I could hit the ball pretty good. I just couldn't necessarily hit it straight. Anyway, we get out on, we're golfing, and I meet Yvon Cornway, and he's a very nice man. And we get out on, I think it was on the first tee. I hit a really good drive right straight down the middle of the fairway, like pure shithouse luck.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey," I said, "that's not bad. Maybe I'll buy some gloves. Maybe I'll buy some clubs and take up this game." And everyone kind of chuckled. And then, like, next hole, I hit one off into the woods, or I just like a completely terrible shot. And Yvonne Cormier goes, "Hey, Ted, are you sure you want to buy those clubs?" And I laughed. And so we get going along, and I think we're on the back nine by this time. And Mark Mintzberg is playing the round of his life, and he's beating Yvonne Cormier. And Yvonne's not happy because he's a competitor. You don't win 10 Stanley Cups without being a competitor. So at one point, he shanks his drive. And I laughed and said, "Hey, Yvonne, maybe I'll buy your clubs." And he turned right around and he goes, "You want to play right now?" And I said, "Yvonne, it's just a joke." And he goes, "I don't take it." And in 30 years since, we still use that all the time. Us and the guys in our circles. I don't take it.
It's become part of our parlance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we should. I want to make this abundantly clear. One of the nicest men you'll ever want to meet.
Oh, absolutely. And he very quickly came around.
Yes.
He realized that his anger had gotten the best of him, and he very quickly smoothed the waters.
Yeah, him and his wife Evelyn are at so many different charity things. He still represents that sweater very, very well. Has done so for years in the community. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, nice man. But as you point out, you don't get 10 rings without having a competitive side. And our claim to fame was me and the people in my school year at Pierrefonds Comprehensive High School, we all went to school with Evelyn. So.
Oh God! Well, that's out of a book. My favorite book of all time. Never mind my favorite sports book. My favorite book of all time, Ball 4 by Jim Bouton. Jim Bouton was a Major League Baseball pitcher, and at the end of his career, he went to the Seattle Mariners in the expansion draft, and he kept a diary of his one season with the Mariners. And he told a story that had been related to him by, what was the catcher's name? Or the guy's name? Jim Pagliarone or something like that, who had played with Ted Williams towards the end of Ted Williams' career, and told a story about Ted Williams, who was probably the best hitter in the history of baseball, and was also a war hero. I don't know if many people know that about Ted Williams. He flew combat missions in the Korean War. And I guess a big part of the reason he was such a great combat pilot was and a great baseball hitter was because his eyesight was so good. And great pilots and great hitters both have great eyesight. So anyway, Ted Williams, this guy told the story about Ted Williams would come out to batting practice before anyone else was in the ballpark, just him and the pitcher, the batting practice pitcher, and he would scream at the top of his lungs while he'd hit these line drives out over the right field wall. And the way he told the story was he would go, "I'm Ted fucking Williams, and I'm the greatest fucking hitter who ever lived." Crack! There goes one over the wall. Jesus H. Christ himself couldn't get me out. Whack! Here comes Jim Bunning. Jim fucking Bunning with that little shit slider of his. Does he think he's going to get me out with that shit? Whack! I'm Ted fucking Williams. Crack!
I guess you need that kind of confidence to be Ted Williams.
I guess so, yeah. And that's one of many great stories. Great stories in that book. Yeah. I've read that book about half a dozen times, and you know what? I'm due to read it again. Yeah. And it's just so good. And it was a scandal at the time.
Yeah.
When that book came out.
Baseball players hated that book.
Because he told the behind the scenes stories, about what, life on the team and on the road was really like. And I remember on the back of the copy that my father had, they would have quotes from people, and like Bowie Kuhn, who was the commissioner at the time, his quote was, "Jim Bouton has done a great disservice to the game of baseball." Mickey Mantle and Bouton told some great stories about Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle's quote was, "Jim who?" Back in the day, and I guess still at smaller radio stations,
there was a time in this country where
there were radio obituaries.
Yeah, and every radio station, this is, this is a big country we live in. I don't know if you've ever driven across it, But it's
I have not. I would like to sometime.
You should. It
and,
really
and
is
I
fascinating.
may yet. We'll see if I get my class 1 license.
Right. And in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all radio stations or all communities, small communities, medium-sized communities, small communities, large and small, all across the country had a local radio station. And so you could be in a Charlottetown, you could be in Laval, you could be in Mississauga. Mississauga has its own radio station still, I think. And in all of the small towns, it was always fun to listen to because it was usually staffed by young people. I know, they're mostly young trying to be broadcasters today in big cities, and that's a whole other story that I won't go into now. But back then, if you wanted to get your start in the business, you would go to Brandon or Kenora or Drumheller or Medicine Hat or
Churchill in your case,
Yeah,
Churchill, Manitoba, Charlottetown, PEI in my case.
Right. So you would go to these small towns, and these small town radio stations were like the town square. If you've ever been to Italy, there's always a big piazza where everybody gathers. Well, in a place like Brandon, the town square was the local radio station, CKX, and it had young people who had to do things like swap shop. Swap shop. Remember swap shop?
Yeah.
You would host a call-in show, and people would call in and tell you about their bug-infested old shit that they wanted to sell for $11.
Yeah.
And leave
Or trade.
Right, or trade, right? It was called swap shop.
I got a leaky radiator.
I got a mattress my grandmother died on. I'd like $30 for it. You can call me. So it was always entertaining in its own way. And this one particular day, I was driving through Brandon getting a kick out of listening to the local station, and I stumbled on the obituaries, which were a service to people in a small town, especially small towns without newspapers.
Yep.
Somebody would pass away, and you would have to go.
During the news package, there would be, when I worked in Charlottetown, the major, I think the noon and the 6 o'clock news package, part of it was the obituaries, the radio obituaries.
And a big radio prank always was someone would either moon you while you were reading the obituaries, or they would make funny faces. Or
very dignified.
Yeah, very, very dignified. I'll tell the dick out on the desk story in a moment. And this one particular day, none of that happened. But the kid that was reading the obituaries said, Frank Johnson of Brandon, Manitoba, wife of Catherine, leaves 2 children behind, Anthony and Charlie, and the service will be at such and such a place at such and such a time in lieu of flowers. The dedication, the donations may be made to the St. Brandon's Hospital Association. Mr. Jackson was a veteran of WW11. I nearly drove off the road. And we have to explain it, no doubt.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's, it was obviously WW World War II, but the 2 was written in Roman numerals.
Right.
And she read it as 11.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really, 11. Wow, I missed 3 through 10.
And just quickly, the Dick on the Desk story didn't happen to me.
No.
But it happened. It was, and I don't remember the actors, but there was always, especially in the days when radio was. I mean, it was a big deal. We were talking about this in our first podcast about newscasts and how important they were and how serious it was. And, you couldn't laugh during the news. You couldn't break a smile. So that's why people tried to throw you off. There was the famous one where someone would tiptoe into the room and light your copy on fire.
Yeah.
And you would hear the sound of flapping papers as they tried to put the flame out. And apparently this one day at CJD, one of the legendary newsreaders was reading the news on CJD, and a confrere who had apparently brought his flask to work during the 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at news, so nobody was in the radio station, tiptoed into the newsroom where the guy was reading the news and did his fly down, and flopped his dick right on the desk to try and throw him off. And without like missing a beat, the guy kept reading the news and leaned over and went and slammed his fist down on the guy's dick and just kept reading the news.
Wow. And so they would put us and a bunch of listeners and winners, on the upper deck in business class on KLM.
Upstairs on the 747.
On the 747.
Where you could go into the lounge and have a smoke.
Yeah. And they would fly us over to Amsterdam, and we would stay in a nice hotel and tour around Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And one year when we went, one of the things about Amsterdam is, and of course, I mean, this is not a big deal here now because it's legal here now as well, but in Amsterdam, long before cannabis could be legally purchased here, you could get it in Amsterdam at coffee shops.
Right.
And so back in the 90s, when we were in more party mode than we are now, that was one of the delights of going to Amsterdam. And one night, I went over to the Bulldog Cafe, which was a famous.
Still is, I think.
Is it
I
in
think
Amsterdam?
so.
I think the Bulldog's actually a chain. I think there are a few of them. Anyway, you could buy hash at the Bulldog Cafe. So I went over to the Bulldog. We were in the Leidseplein in Amsterdam, one of the main squares, and I bought a chunk of hash, and it was a 2.5 grams of hash.
It looked like a piece of Wrigley's gum, only it wasn't the color of gum, but it was that long.
So I brought it back over to where we were sitting and having our beers in the square, and then I realized, shit, I don't have any rolling papers. And I said to Terry, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. We'll cut it in half, and we'll each just eat half. I said, I've done that at home, and it's, you get high, and it'll work just fine. Now, back here, we would buy hash in 1 gram chunks. Mm-hmm. This was a 2.5 gram chunk.
Can I just say, I was not an avid smoker. I had asthma when I was a kid, so that was not.
That was not your thing.
That was not my thing. I was as many beers as you could get in me kind of guy. So this, I was like, oh, look at this. It was men, when it was illegal here, over there, we were sitting in the square and there were guys in suits with briefcases rolling joints in the open. And I thought this was something I'd never seen before.
So I cut the 2.5 grams in half, thinking in my head that it was only 1 gram and that we were each only going to eat half a gram of hash, and we were going to get a good buzz and have a good time. And so we each eat our chunk, and we're walking back to the hotel later, and I said to Terry, I'm not feeling anything from that hash. I didn't even get high. And Terry says, yeah, and that's surprising because that was 2.5 grams. And I said, that was 2.5 grams? Holy shit. Anyway, night. So we both go off to our rooms. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I think, well, I'm having a drug overdose in a foreign country and I'm going to die. Yes. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks and it was washing over me. And I sat on the edge of the bed and thought to myself, holy Christ, I've never been this high in my life and I'm getting higher by the second. And I thought, well, you know what? You've been high before, just ride it out, which I was eventually able to do. I was able to get back to sleep. And then, and meanwhile you were, and I was going to call you, but I was too paranoid. I better not call him.
Well, if the phone had rang, I would have had a heart attack.
Yeah. Because you were downstairs having your own crisis.
I was having a crisis of epic proportions, and I was, for some reason, we were in a hotel and I was in a basement suite. Yep. And I had cracked the window. The window only opened a crack, and I was standing on a chair and the window was open and I was doing this
trying to get some air
and trying to, because you couldn't leave the room. Yeah. God knows you wouldn't want to leave the room and interact with people. And then I remember toying with the idea, I've got to give in and call the front desk and tell them to phone an ambulance. I've got to, because all I could see in my head was it was kind of like the Supertramp bars at the concert that were spinning round and round. Only it was Ted's face going, 2.5 grams, 2.5 grams, 2.5 grams.
I didn't even get high. Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
And then later that morning when I woke up, I went down to Terry's room and we laughed laughed.
Yeah.
I mean, by this time we had come down
Yeah.
from the worst of it, and we were in that goofy laughing phase of being high.
I said never again, and I never.
Is that right, eh?
Never again. Yeah. After we left CJD and went back to Shome, we were beginning to become much more confident in who we were and what we did and how we were doing it. And I think as a result of that, we were more in control. Some days out of control, but more in control of what we were doing.
Yeah. And I think, speaking for myself, I know a little bit less concerned with what's anybody going to think. Frankly, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. You know, I'll do what I do to the best of my ability, and if it flies, great, and if it doesn't, well, I'll try to be better tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know,
I think, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I certainly have. It's one of the there are a number of things that aren't great about getting older, but one of the things that is great about getting older is I don't give a shit. You know, if you don't, you're not interested, and then I don't care. Like you said, you know, we in the last episode we talked about hate mail we received, and back then it had a real onerous effect. You know, it's like you'd walk around for days thinking, "What am I doing wrong?"
Yeah,
and now you think,
Yeah, I mean, you know, nobody likes to be insulted.
No.
Nobody likes to be criticized, and I don't mind constructive criticism, and I'm quite open to it. But for example, social media is not a great forum for constructive criticism. I hope you fucking die, you asshole piece of garbage. That's not constructive criticism.
It isn't?
No, I can't take that and somehow make myself better with that. But increasingly, and I'm not there yet. My skin is not, completely thick yet. Yeah. Sometimes I still let it get under my skin a little bit if somebody takes, especially an anonymous. I don't like anonymous trolls online. If you're going to take a shot at me, take your shot, but look me in the eye. Yeah. Look me in the eye when you take your shot.
What you think.
Exactly. Have the courage of your convictions, and I'm liable to take you a little bit more seriously. But no, I know what you're saying. I'm getting much better as time goes on at not giving a shit.
You wade into cesspools that
I'm getting better at not wading into those.
I just my wife will go, "Come and look what Ted said."
Yeah, not as much as I used to, and I try to measure it on a couple of levels. A, is it worth it? Is it worth the battle? And B, will I get fired for it from my current employer?
Yeah.
Because you got to think about that a lot too, because the sharks are constantly circling on social media now. People are actively trying to destroy other people's lives for sport.
Yeah. It's frightening a little bit.
Yeah.
And we did say at the outset, upon sitting in these two chairs, we're not going there. We're not wading into pools. We're gonna have some fun and some laughs and tell stories.
Yeah. And you know what? If we happen to blunder into any of the hot topics of the day, we will delicately remove ourselves or try to handle it like Poseidon and Pantelis and Mike on 2 drink minimum. Yes. They're so good at taking on like the real touchy hot topics of the day, and they just make it funny.
You can also email us at yugahagawaga.com.
They just make it funny, and also, and I respect the hell out of this, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. You don't give a shit, do you, Poseidon?
No.
I've told fans live on air during the morning show to go fuck themselves.
Right to the point then.
Yeah, just to cause a stir amongst themselves, and then they start fighting in the chat.
But the Goodwill ambassador from Johnny Walker was doing the rounds, and he came into the radio station, and
they were launching the Blue Label.
Is that what they were doing?
Yeah, because the Blue Label is what, $200 a bottle?
Something crazy. Yeah. They lined up 5 bottles of scotch, and we sampled from each bottle up to and including the blue
at 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah, it was early in the morning. All I remember was that the 8:30 news was a happy newscast. Good morning, everybody. Everything's great. In the news, it's all great. I tell you right now. It's great.
There's a couple of legendary stories in the industry of drunk news guys. And what is
Well, you witnessed one.
I did. What is it about drunk news guys that go, something tells them to go to, everything's okay, no problem whatsoever.
I don't know.
And
yeah.
we've heard a couple of tapes of a couple of people doing just that.
There's one from Calgary in the 1980s.
Yes.
I wish I still had this because it was so funny.
I've looked for it. I can't
This
find
guy
it.
was hammered.
It was New Year's Eve.
Is that what it was?
I think so.
Well, he obviously came straight to work from the party or the bar or wherever he was.
Yeah.
And he opens the newscast with he opens the newscast by going, "It's 7 degrees at 6:01. It's -4." An 11-degree temperature swing in that 2 second span.
And it all went downhill from there.
He just kicked it around the block. And like Terry said, every story he did, there's a fire in the Northeast End today, but everything's okay, no problem whatsoever. Every story at the end of it was everything's okay, no problem whatsoever, which I think was him trying to convince himself on the air that everything was okay, no problem whatsoever. I got news for you, pal. Everything's not okay, big problem.
I'd like to, if you don't mind, address the blubbering, because this is Poseidon. Do any of the other guys on the podcast you host or co-host with do a lot of crying?
A lot of what? Sorry,
crying.
Like
weeping.
Like tears from the eyes.
That tears from the eyes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not that I know.
He's going, why is he asking me?
Why, you guys want to cry? You want to have a cry?
Well, any moment now it could happen.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of cries. There's what I like to call is the World War II veteran cry.
Yeah.
Which is, and I mean this with deep respect.
Oh, boy.
As you know,
Yeah.
I'm a World War II history buff. I have an immense amount of respect for, people who served and landed on the beaches in Normandy. But there is, if you watch World War II documentaries, which I do, anytime there's anything on the History Channel, I'm always, on it like a smell. And when you interview veterans who were taught not to cry.
Well, that generation. Men don't cry.
Yeah, you keep
Suck
that
it up.
in.
Yeah.
You keep that in. But when they get to their 80s
Yeah.
and they begin to tell the stories, they like to remind you that they're not crying.
Well, there was... Do you want me to tell the Charlie Martin story?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Please do.
Charlie Martin was a veteran of the Queen's. I think he was landed with the Queen's Own Rifles on D-Day, and he's passed away now, as most of them have.
Yeah,
there are very
that's
few
the
left.
thing, yeah.
Because any guy who was 20 years old on D-Day is 100 now.
Yeah.
So Charlie Martin... Is that the that's I don't know if that's the math exactly, but it's
actually,
pretty close
you're
to
pretty spot on. Yeah.
There you go.
So there was about 20 years ago. You know who was involved in this because he tweeted about it recently, and I had a little exchange with him on Twitter. Was Anthony Wilson Smith?
Yeah. Also, the guy who does all the
Historic Canada. He runs Historic Canada.
Anthony is one of the brightest people I know, one of the nicest people I know, and the respect he has for those people in that era is apparent. Let's just put it that way.
So he was involved with taking Charlie Martin. I think he was writing with Maclean's at the time, and he was involved with taking Charlie Martin back over to. It might have been 1994. It might have been the 50th anniversary of D-Day. And so there's a video clip, and I think you can find it on YouTube because I did find it when I had that exchange with Anthony. And they've got Charlie Martin at the cemetery, and he's going up and down the rows, and he goes, "There's a bunch of good, and there's old place. He was a good man." And then you see him take his handkerchief out, and he starts to wipe his eyes, and he goes, "I'm not crying. I'm not crying." While he's crying, while he's sobbing, but insisting that he is not crying.
Yeah.
Because of that generation.
And
it was that generation.
I used to enjoy watching them trying to stifle their cry.
Yeah.
Because they always end up looking like Dizzy Gillespie. Their cheeks puff out like this.
Yeah.
And they're like I'm not crying. And the reason I bring it up again is not out of any kind of disrespect.
Oh God, no, anything but.
But you and I, is it an age thing? Because
Well, it must be. I used to tease you all the time about it.
You used to yell at me because I've been a crier my whole life. For anybody who's of a certain age, if I tell you I would cry at long distance commercials, you know what I mean. AT&T used to have these, in the days when you had to dial long distance. And they had these, television commercials. You can go on YouTube and find them. There were days where you had to pay for long distance phone calls. My mother and father would set the timer on the oven to 10 minutes and then call my grandparents in Toronto, and the timer would go off and we'd have to hang up the phone. Otherwise we'd be bankrupt from the long distance charges. And AT&T used to have these commercials about calling home, and I would get all weepy, and you would say to me, stop your
get a hold of yourself for Christ's sake. And now I'm worse than he is. Now I cry at the drop of a hat now, and I guess that comes with getting older. I remember my grandfather, before he passed away, he was like, we'd go visit him. I'd go over and mow his lawn, and he'd give me $5 and cry when I left. Yeah.
I guess there must be something to it because I'm more apt to cry now.
Well, you're also Italian. That's fucking Italians will cry at anything.
That's very true.
Have you ever seen the YouTube video of the Italian fireman who rescues the kitten?
No.
Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God. Just Google Italian fireman rescues kitten.
Okay.
And he's this big, strapping, bald-headed young Italian guy, and he reaches down into a gutter or something, and he gets this little kitten out, and he brings it up. And his buddies are all patting him in the back going, let's get it back. Oh my God. I cry just thinking about it. He just loses it.
I've seen it, and I've actually just found it. It actually pops up on auto search.
Oh yeah? Can you play it so that it's on the camera screen?
No.
So that it's on the camera screen? Can the people see it?
Can you
in
put
TV
it on,
land?
Put it on
Here
the,
it is. Here it
put
is.
It on the blinking light.
Have you ever seen this, Ted?
All right, here we go. There, 27.
Audio, or are we gonna get bamboozled by
Italian. Okay.
Giada Zamini? No, she's not important.
Okay. Sorry, Giada. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Hold on, because I gotta figure this out.
All right. You want to put it up on the flash?
He's got it up on the screen. Yeah.
Grande. Bravi ragazzi. Certo.
Grande ragazze.
Ancora?
Bravi ragazzi.
That makes me cry again.
It is.
That's so Italian, isn't it?
It is.
That's just so Italian.
You're right about that. It's
Now, this is the longest.
I don't know who that is.
Ignore that.
Okay, that's not going to make you cry.
Oh,
but,
God. I should have brought a hanky.
But it's funny.
Oh, shit.
Pull yourself together.
Oh, serious.
Speaking of the tweeter, Ted.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
On my radio program on Light 106.7, 106.7 FM, online at light1067.ca, on the iHeartRadio app, and on your smart speaker. Every weekday morning at about 20 after 6, I do something called the tweet sheet, where I'll take 3 tweets that I think are funny and that I think will make Tom Whalen, my on-air partner, laugh.
I love this.
Now, there are a lot of tweets. There's a lot of funny on Twitter. Twitter can be a real shithole, but like the internet, the broader internet experience, that is, it's the best and the worst of everything.
Right.
It's a shithole, but it's also chock-a-block full of really good humor. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of tweets I've come across that have made me belly laugh, but I can't use them on the radio.
Okay.
For obvious reasons.
And look at us in podcast
because
land.
they're salty. And here we are in podcast land, so we can use them. So I brought along a few.
All righty.
And I want to run them by you, Terry, and see what you think. Here's one from @Smooheed. HR says I'm no longer allowed to answer the phone with, for fuck's sake, what now? Isn't that funny?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, she's terrific. She's really, really good.
I gotta follow her. My fairy princess.
My fairy princess Smoo, or the handle is at, or whatever you call it. The at is at Smoohie.
I think, is that MF? Is that motherfucker?
Probably.
Yeah, probably motherfucking fairy princess.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
boy,
that's a good one.
Very funny. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one,
back
Poseidon. Yeah. If you're listening, we've got these up on a screen in the studio.
Yeah.
So we'll go from one to the next here.
Okay.
The next one, if it's the one that I think it is.
Okay.
All
right.
Probably get rid of this.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
there we go.
Okay.
This one's from it's Nash Flynn.
Okay.
My asshole neighbor complained that our rooster was loud in the morning, and then my rooster died unexpectedly. So now I'm forced to stand on the porch at 5:15 a.m. to scream, "The sun! Oh my God! It's the fucking sun!"
Rooster translator.
Well, when you think about it, that's what a rooster's saying.
That's exactly
the sun. Oh my God! It's the fucking sun.
There was a quick sidebar.
Yeah.
There was a place I used to visit years ago in British Columbia, and I would go for a walk around 11:30, 11:45, and I would walk by this place where a rooster at around quarter after noon or 12:30 would go. And I would quarter afternoon. I think that must be like the party rooster, I guess. It's like, hey pal, the sun's been up for quite some time now.
Just rolling out of bed, at lunchtime.
Literally rolling out of the hay.
Oh, cripes. All right, who do we got next?
All right, here we go.
From at Viking Jonesy. Code Brown, I shout as I accidentally shit my pants in the Cracker Barrel parking lot. Oh, God.
Oh, these are great.
Aren't they?
Also, the Twitter handles Jonesy the Beautiful Idiot.
Yeah.
God love you, Jonesy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, those are fun.
Yeah, maybe I should be reading those instead of the ats. I don't know. I usually mention the ats on the radio in case anyone wants to go to the. And I also brought along Code Brown. I also brought along a couple that I have used on the air, but were so funny I thought you'd get a big kick out of them.
Alrighty.
This is Skoog. He's very good.
Yeah.
George Washington. This tyranny cannot stand. John Adams. Hear, hear. What say you, Benjamin? Ben Franklin, slowly going insane because of the syphilis. I'ma make a lightning kite. I'ma make a lightning kite. Okay, and one more.
All right.
This might be my all-time favorite.
Okay.
Steve versus ninjas. At Jonestown, 906 cultists died of drinking poison Kool-Aid, as well as the first officer on the scene, Jeff, don't mind if I do, Ramirez. What do we got here?
Oh, God.
Don't mind if I do. Why don't we talk about Jaguar Land Rover Laval?
I like that.
The title sponsors of this podcast, who have, for this weekend, loaned me a Jaguar F-Type P380 Sports Coupe.
And I know what the P is for.
What?
Well, because you pee your pants when you step on the accelerator. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's got some giddy up. It's a beautiful, beautiful car, and they've given me that for the weekend to ferry Terry to and fro from the podcast studio. And on the way up here this morning, we made a very interesting discovery. They have Katharine Hepburn as the voice on the GPS. Don't they, Tara?
They do. They do.
We got detoured on the way here, so I turned on the GPS. Do it, Tara. Imitate the GPS from this car.
It sounded like he had plugged in Katharine Hepburn on the GPS because it was like, in 300 meters, you're going to want to turn on Southey Street. Because, as usual, everything was detoured, and I said, that would be a fun gag if Katharine Hepburn would say, your exit is coming up, pay some attention, for God's sake.
It's so true. I guess it was the regular voice, but for whatever reason, because of the signal or whatever, it was just a bit warbly for a second. Terry goes, Christ, it's Catherine Hepburn. Turn left on Sauve.
It's probably because of all the bloody potholes in the roads. That's why.
Oh, God, that was funny.
You seen the new Rolling Stone list of the 500 greatest songs?
I've seen it. I haven't looked at it all the way through, but I've seen it.
Can you get that up for us, Poseidon, and tell me what the I'm going to get Poseidon. Like I saw what's his name? The guy, he was on MTV for years, and he's now on Carson Daly.
Right.
He's now on NBC's morning show.
Yep.
And I saw a clip of him online the other day, and he was so pissed because he was saying, like, Stairway to Heaven, all of those, big songs. Like, I guess the millennials have taken over at Rolling Stone magazine. So they've put out a new top 500, and none of the songs.
And number one is Wet Ass Pussy.
Well, I'm unfamiliar with that track, but
really? You know that one, eh? Who is that? Who does that?
What's her? That stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's Megan the Stallion and the other one who does Wet Ass Pussy.
Wow,
The one that goes, meow, she does all those. Weird
wow,
songs. Yeah.
that's
Terry, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. It's
Cardi
a song.
B.
Cardi B.
Yes.
Wet Ass Pussy
Okay.
or WAP.
Okay.
And I think it played
All
on.
right.
I think it played on the radio, and I thought to myself, how the hell do you play that on the radio? Because it's all about whores and my wet ass pussy and just the kind of thing that you want to put on when mom comes over.
Yeah. Have you found that list?
The 500 greatest songs of all time.
Okay.
I even found another list for you guys.
Okay.
The 500 greatest albums of all time.
Okay. So would you? This is Rolling Stone magazine, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Rolling Stone magazine. This is the new list. What's the date on it, Poseidon? Make sure it's the list that.
September 15, 2021.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. So let's hear the top 10 from the new 500.
Oh, the top 10 you want? Okay.
Another curveball from DiMonte. Yeah, I don't think we have time for all 500, but
Did you hear their podcast the other day? It was pretty good for a while, and then they just started listing songs. Jesus, Murphy.
okay, do it from.
I'm going to do it from 10.
Yeah.
So it's a surprise to me as I'm scrolling.
Okay,
down.
actually, let's do it from 20. Okay.
Oh, 20. Okay.
Is 20 easy to get?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so here's the.
They have them in sections of 50.
All right, here you go.
Okay.
All right, here's the top 20.
Robin, Dancing on My Own.
This is 20.
Number 20, yes.
Okay.
And then John Lennon, Imagine.
Okay,
at
19.
And then Purple Rain.
Okay.
At 18.
Pretty good.
Prince.
Good
Yeah.
choice. Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay.
Another
Yeah.
great choice.
Yeah. Classic rock track.
Beyonce featuring Jay-Z, Crazy in Love.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of them at least.
Okay.
The Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand.
What number is that?
At 15.
Okay.
At number 14, we got the Kinks, Waterloo Sunset.
Okay.
At number 13, we got the Rolling Stones, Give Me Shelter.
Okay.
At number 12, we got Stevie Wonder, Superstition.
Okay. Yeah, good song.
11, the Beach Boys, God Only Knows.
Yeah, I like that. Love that.
At number 10, we got Outkast, Hey Yeah.
Top 10.
Outcast with a K.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 9, we got Fleetwood Mac, Dreams.
Okay.
At number 8, Missy Elliott, Get Your Freak On.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's way better than Stairway to Heaven. Yep. Okay.
Number 7, the Beatles, Strawberry Fields Forever.
Okay.
Andy.
Yep.
Marvin Gaye, What's Going On at number 6.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Number 5, Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Of course.
Bob Dylan at number 4, Like a Rolling Stone. At number 3, we got Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come. Oh, this is a good. I like this song.
Yeah.
Number 2, we got Public Enemy, Fight the Power.
Way better than Let It Be.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And the number one song from the new top 500?
Aretha Franklin, Respect.
Okay. Well, that's decent. It's a lot less worse than I thought.
A lot less worse.
Yeah.
I think that's from the Department of Redundancy. Depart.
I'm going to be honest. It was a little stressful going through the just the top 20.
Yeah.
Because I was worried I was going to see like a Nicki Minaj or like a Cardi B
me
song.
too. Well, there you have it. It's you can decide whether or not it was the best of Standing By season 1, and hope you enjoyed it. And Ted, we should quickly mention that season 2 has been drawn up. The schedule was drawn up, and then the pandemic arrived and put us off schedule.
We have a schedule and we have guests, and we've been delayed. We're thinking by a month or so. We hope to be in this. We had hoped to be in the studio in January. Now we hope to be in the studio in February, and that would mean, I would assume, that we'll have episodes ready for release in March.
Right, there you go. And when people say, why don't you just do it this way? This is fun, but nothing replaces Ted and I sitting across from each other and hanging out for a few days. So that's what we're going to do. We'll keep you posted. Watch for the mini podcast, which should be up sometime in the next couple of days for more information on season 2 of the Standing By podcast.
We should mention, too, that you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Standing By or at Terry and Ted Podcast. Shouldn't have brought it up because I don't know which it is. You can go on the Google.
Yeah, Google the Standing By podcast, and it'll take you everywhere.
There you go. These kids today and their Google.
Crazy. I'll see you later.
Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast, is sponsored by Jaguar Land Rover Laval, where the luxury is unmistakably British, but nobody wears a top hat or a monocle.